Welcome everyone to CDO Magazine series of one-on-one interviews with CDOs, data leaders, and key influencers. You're listening to Robert Lutton, Vice President Santal Consultants, and we're both coming to you today from Toronto, Canada. Working with the CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ Symposium, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers. Today, I'd like to introduce Della Shea, Chief Data Governance and Privacy Officer at Symcor. Welcome, Della.
Thank you, Robert, and really happy to be here with you today.
It's our pleasure too. And if I may, you've got a great background and impressive resume, but I would like to start with a background question to introduce you to our audience. Could you tell us a little bit about your career and what brought you to data and to Symcor?
Great question, Robert. I would say that my career was a little bit deliberate and perhaps mostly undeliberate, but kind of fell into data. My career started about 20 years ago. I was actually studying electronic commerce and computer science at the time, which led to a 4-month internship at Royal Bank of Canada, which is Canada's largest bank, or one of Canada's largest banks. And my role at that time was to figure out how to come up with a privacy policy that all functions within the bank would agree to. So this included banking, insurance, investments, and capital markets. And little did I realize that that internship would lead to an entire career centered around data. So I've done a lot of things since that time. I've worked in product management, I've worked in security, enterprise risk management, data governance, data management, compliance, all centered around data. So again, it was a little bit of a fluke actually, but I never dreamed at that time that I would be able to span an entire career focusing on data.
It's sometimes interesting how we start off from one direction and get into another direction. I understand that you were maybe the first privacy officer at the bank, that they didn't have a position before.
I'm really dating myself, Robert, when you ask that question, because if you think back 20 years ago, this was really kind of at the tail end of the .com era. So for those of you who are of my age and vintage, you would remember that one of the big revolutions around technology was around .com. And so along that time, there was the evolution of some really early thinking around privacy and data protection. And in Canada, it was at a time when having a private sector privacy law was still in fruition. And so when I started at the bank, the Canadian privacy legislation for private sector at that time was still in draft. And it was really important for the bank to figure out what they needed to do to comply with it. So at that time, there were no privacy consultants, or there was no privacy lawyers. So the bank had to go to universities and look for students that were doing research in the area. And that's what led me to this opportunity. So in a sense, was kind of the first person that was really thinking about it as a lowly intern.
The fact that you got a very diverse background in related to data is a credit to you. And obviously, Symcor is very lucky to have you. Looking at Symcor and some of the projects you got on the table, what are you most excited about and proud about in the projects that you're currently looking at and implementing at Symcor?
That's a great question. I would say I've had many really interesting projects and opportunities throughout my career. The one that I'm currently leading is the one that is making me most excited, because I'm leading what we're calling a data governance maturity program. And the title of that sounds quite boring, actually, but what it means is I have the opportunity to really innovate and think about not what it means to manage data as an asset in today's environment, but how do we actually think about and innovate what data means to Symcor in the future. And so being able to think, 4 years ahead, 5 years ahead, and trying to architect what the world will look like to ensure that we're ready to be able to serve our clients, to ensure that we have strong data processing capabilities and other opportunities is really what the crux of what my program is. And it's a combination of looking at all the things that I've done in my career. It's kind of all coming together through this program. So it involves looking at data from the time you have an idea. So with product management, innovation, so my time spent in that space and thinking about how do you look at opportunities. Often people will talk about data as being the new oil. I have a hard time with that analogy because I think data is not the same as a natural resource of oil. Data is actually the most valuable data is actually coming from individuals and human beings. So having the ability to understand the values and principles around that really precious asset that you have accountability and have been entrusted to manage from the time you're thinking about those opportunities all the way through how do you take those ideas, turn them into actual products and services, and then go to the next step, which is how do you ensure that you are operationalizing and delivering on the things that have been committed to and promised, and having that kind of that holistic view. That's really what our program is about. So I'm really excited to kind of bring all of those disciplines together and to create something really, quite what I'm feeling it's quite revolutionary. I often use the analogy that we're building a data factory. So we've been on this journey of digital transformation for some time. And it's not just about looking at an opportunity and say, hey, this is a cool thing, but it's about how do you actually shift an entire organization and mindset to be able to have staying power in the future.